into the online broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans. Producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows. Interviewing celebrities and showrunners. And bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Hey guys, and welcome to the Walking Dead After Show with full extra big panel. Today, joining us, we have Joyce Ajouri once again.
Hello, hello.
Derrial Christon.
What's up, walkers?
Back from the dead.
That's right.
That's why he was gone last week.
That's right.
He came back.
Looking better than ever.
Yes.
Yes, looking very
I
spit.
took my zombie juice.
Oh, it worked. Well done. And Nando Velasquez.
Yeah, I hope you're hungry because I'm not.
Oh, well, actually, I don't know why. Walking Dead makes me really hungry because they had a feast at the end. And guys, I'm Dave Klein, but joining us today, we have a special guest with us, Andy Goldenberg, who you may better know as Golden Tusk for his YouTube channel, Golden Tusk.
Yes, aptly named.
That's why I did it that way, because then you'll know me as Golden Tusk.
Was that a nickname before, or was it?
It actually was, although it's a little. I don't know. You're a gamer, so
Yeah.
It was a game called Killer Instinct.
Oh yeah.
And there was a character named Tusk, and my last name is Goldenberg, and you could change the colors of the warriors, and so I changed Tusk to be gold, and I was Tusk and Golden Tusk throughout all of college.
Nice.
And then you did like GT as your initials when you finish and all that.
GT.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into the show and go ahead and start. And we're just basically, as this show didn't have separate storylines per se, we're going to kind of go by pre-church, church, and then kind of the aftermath of events. So with the pre-church, it was all about reunions, and that's how we started the show, where we have the crew all traveling together, Maggie and Glenn happy together, and it looked to me like Tara was almost a little bit jealous of their relationship from the little shot that she had glancing back. But Rick and her having a conversation where he basically forgives her, and that's kind of her storyline throughout the episode, is her feeling really bad for being part of the governor's crew. So it was nice to see them actually all completely forgiving, and that was pretty much the theme of this episode too. When you think about, they go to church, which is all about forgiveness, and outside of Gabriel, who won't tell and confess his sins, a lot of it was everyone confessing to each other this episode. It seemed to be a very common theme where, I mean, it was Tara confessing to everybody about what she did, and then Carol having trouble confessing about her things, and everyone forgiving each other. So actually kind of a positive note episode for a change.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're definitely right about the church and everyone looking for forgiveness. They're sharing their secrets. You know, the name Strangers, if you think about it too, is they really didn't have a moment to bond when they were all in that boxcar from the end of last season. So really, in the end, this isn't the normal group. You know, we now have Abraham, we now have Eugene, we now have Rosita, we now have Tara. So we have all these additions, and it's a bunch of strangers who now get to learn to adapt together and work together.
That's true.
So I think that, you know, and then strangers as far as, you know, Father Gabriel, we see who's kind of a little strange, and you know, so there's definitely a lot there. But yeah, I do love the analogy with forgiveness and, you know, just clearing. I want to say clearing because I don't know, I like that word clear.
That was another episo's name.
That was another
wrong episode.
I know, wrong episode. But clearing the air, people clearing the air and getting their past demons off. Everyone except for the father, actually, which is kind of ironic that everyone wants to just fess up except for the father.
Especially when the other father, Rick,
Yeah.
with Carl, has a nice father-son.
That was a beautiful talk
That was
too.
a really cool moment.
Yeah.
I saw like Carl's growth in that scene too, especially as we get to it. But on the chat, we got a bunch of people chiming in about Tara in that moment, where a bunch of them saying that Tara is jealous of Maggie for Glenn, and then people, I think, correcting Bart, Jay, Razzle saying, I think Tara wants Maggie, and Sarah Parsons saying, I think agreeing with that because, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think Tara is a lesbian,
Yeah,
so I don't think she was. Yeah,
Glenn.
Tara plays on that team.
But
Yes.
I mean,
seems like
looking back and knowing what happens in the rest of the episode now, maybe that look for Tara was kind of her struggling with, should I tell them?
True.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Who I was with, what I was a part of, all this stuff. So maybe that was kind of the beginning of her thinking to herself, like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't tell them. But it could be jealousy. I mean,
Yeah, we actually
Maggie's
have
hot.
Bahaha Val. Yeah. We actually have Bahaha Val. I like the hashtag Joyce wants to start. We'll have to talk about that.
Oh,
yes.
I forgot what it was.
Just bring Maggie on the show for me.
Oh yeah, Maggie
That's
for,
it.
Hashtag Maggie for Dave.
So Bahaha Val agreeing with you. I don't see this Tara wanting Glenn. I think it could have been about her debating to tell her about her being with the governor and feeling bad about it. And I think you're right. This was just kind of my initial thoughts as I was writing down. I think you're absolutely
definitely
correct.
in the beginning you would think that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
they
later on
alluded
you
to
kind
that.
of figure that. Yeah.
But at least the conversation that she had with Rick at the top, I think, was really important too. You saved Glenn's life, and she's like, "Well, he saved mine." He goes, "Well, no matter what, you're square with us."
Yeah.
It's kind of like his. If you do any damage to my family, I will kill you.
Yeah.
The opposite's kind of true. You save a life, I've got your back.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
included.
In that scene, I
Definitely.
thought it was interesting because in the take toward Maggie's face, she was smiling at the end of the take, and when they turned it back around to show Tara, you could see that Maggie wasn't smiling, and I thought it was an interesting. I don't know the actor's choice, but in one, it seemed like Maggie was more like, "Hey, I'm friends with you now. We're all good," and in the other take that they used, it was more like, this is still a very serious thing, and we're good, but.
Yeah, I agree. I took it as her being kind of solemn in a way when she did it. But to me, I thought maybe it was because I was thinking about that choice as well. And I was thinking maybe it was a choice of her understanding and being like, I get what it feels like, perhaps. And she was like that comforting in a way of being like, it's okay, baby. Maybe. I mean, but I agree with you. It was an interesting choice in either the editor choice, because maybe she played it multiple ways for both takes.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so who knows? But that's a good catch, definitely.
And also in that realm of them talking about forgiveness, it was interesting to me when Rick had the dialogue with Carol and basically asking her, can the group join back with her?
Yeah,
I found
absolutely.
that, especially after what happened last season.
Will you have us?
Will you have us?
Which I thought was such an awesome, because Talking Dead last week, we can't watch Talking Dead right after because we come on here, but I was watching Talking Dead last week. They actually had a question like, will Carol lead the group?
Yeah.
And it was overwhelmingly, no way will Carol ever lead the group. But here we go, Rick kind of like bowing down to the queen a little bit here and saying, can we join you?
Although not at all. I felt like he said that to her, and then the rest of the episode was him taking charge
Yeah.
and
that's true.
talking to Gabriel. Like immediately right after he says, "Can we join you?" and we see Gabriel, he's the one that goes up to Gabriel and says, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
I guess that's true.
But I mean, in the very least, there seems to be a sort of balancing in powers for the both of them. I mean, Carol's really shown herself these past few episodes. I mean, last season and this season. But I think it's just more of Rick seeing her as someone really equal to him in terms of leadership and strength.
And she gave him respect when she said, you said I could survive.
Yeah.
And you were right. I feel like that was a little bit of respect to him. Like, don't feel bad about letting me go. You said I was going to be a survivor, and I proved myself
she
right.
proved it,
And look at
yeah.
me now.
She's Rambo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
now she's
absolutely.
Rambo.
She totally is.
Totally.
Rambo 1 specifically when he's in the forest. Very specifically.
I'm your worst nightmare.
But I like that because, to me, it gave Rick a bit more of a humble approach, and it earned me a little more respect for him because you see him having become so hardened. So it was nice to him to take a step down with that scene with Carol. But on Carol, on that note, she also has a conversation with Tyrese, talking about forgiving her and that he's forgiven her for what she did, and she should tell everybody. And she still doesn't seem totally open to that idea, though. And she even talks. There's a scene a little bit later with her with Derrial, and Derrial knows, and he's saying she's saying she doesn't want to talk about it, and he doesn't really say anything. A lot of these scenes with them, he's just like, all right, I understand.
And then drops a jug of water.
Yeah, and then drops a jug of water.
Yeah.
Butter hands. It's okay. I understand. That's
Did you guys think that was an outtake that they just used?
That'd be great.
Maybe.
That'd be great if it was.
That would be a
It's
cool
hard
tidbit.
to throw a jug of water when you're. I mean, I guess I wasn't looking at the way he threw it.
To me, it looked intentional. Honestly, the way he threw it, I was like, I thought he just did it on purpose to get her
like
attention.
a romantic comedy type.
Yeah.
I actually thought it was going to be like they both reach down and pick it up and just stare at each other and like, oh.
I'm
and then
ready
just
for them to
away.
kiss already. I mean, there's so much sexual tension obviously
I
between the two. I'm like,
Yeah.
when are we going to see this reveal of them finally
of the
hooking up? I mean, we're waiting for it.
Speaking of kissing, if we can jump there, because it's another reunion in a way, is Bob and Sasha.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were like
One more
PDA
kiss?
the entire
One more kiss, one more?
episode.
Just one
Yeah.
more? Just one more?
Do you think he knew?
It's not foreshadowing at all.
He knew he wasn't going to come back? end up in the situation.
For some reason, just the whole good news, bad news game they were playing.
Right.
Whenever she called it the good side of things, I was like, things are gonna
something's gonna happen.
Something's gonna happen. And then his big speech to Rick when they're walking about going to DC, and all of that was like, something's going on with Bob. I actually. We're probably jumping ahead here. Let's keep to the reunion stuff. But I still thought it was really, really cutesy wootsy. I didn't expect them.
Cutesy wootsy.
I didn't. Yeah,
Cutesy wootsy.
It was all that PDA, PDA cutesy wootsy snuggy huggy. It was kind of like that.
So Sarah Pearson's on the whole Derrial chat saying Derrial will be able to understand and tell her exactly what she needs to hear, which is apparently a whole lot of nothing from this episode. Bart J. Braswell saying Carol still did murder people. I wish they'd have a group discussion about what is right and wrong. And that he loves that they brought the watches back, because then we had that whole scene in this episode. It looked like the watch was broken at this point to me, but
I know the watch that Carol gave Rick that he tried to give back to her, that one was broken. Yeah, I just thought that was a cool little way for her to be like, I'm just going to forget about my past completely. Because she wants to forget about what happened with the kids and everything, and she mirrored what Tyrese said, where he was like, I just want to forget.
I love how they brought it back to that whole Sam, if anyone who didn't listen to our podcast or watch The Talking Dead or read, you wouldn't even know who that guy is. And yet they still talk about that episode, and it was just so really weird. That was, other than Carol getting kicked out, that was such a throwaway episode.
I totally agree with that, because if we hadn't talked about it last week, and I said last week during the show when you guys brought that up, I was like, I didn't even realize who that character was, because it's been almost a year since I watched that episode. So the fact that they brought that up again is a nice reminder for people, definitely. But in the middle of the night, as everything seems good for Walking Dead standards, Derrial and Carol end up hearing a noise or kind of feeling something, and we see that shot as the intro starts. And then as they go head off to, as they're all really concerned about what this noise could possibly be, this is when they hear someone screaming for help. And as Rick and Carl is hesitant, and we'll talk about Rick and Carl's storyline a bit later, they run over and they find Gabriel, the priest, who is freaked the hell out, even a year into his apocalypse of everything going on, to the point where he is vomiting after being saved. So we get this new character, Gabriel.
I feel so bad for him. The struggle is real for Gabriel.
It is.
He's a tortured soul right now.
I wanted him to man up, though. I'm like, come on, man. It's been a year. You know what I mean? And what was he actually out there doing? That's what I was
he was scared. I think this was like his first time that far away from the church, and I guess he was looking for food or something. I don't know.
Okay, but I'm like, dude, you don't have a weapon or anything. I need you to man up. I mean,
but Rick asked him the 3 questions when he finally was like, kind of trusted him a little bit. He asked him the 3 questions that we knew from last season, and he hasn't killed any walkers.
Right.
Yeah.
He says he hasn't killed anybody because he believes in the word of God that will save him.
Yeah.
I loved Rick's look to Gabriel. It's just such a great, everything with Rick is like trust issues.
It's all cynical.
So cynical now.
Look, I don't blame him.
I don't blame him,
Not
though.
at all.
I mean, really,
Even
Father
a priest.
Gabriel...
At this point,
Father Gabriel kind of was shifty even then. Like, that was probably a big question. If you met someone like that at that moment, would you trust him, even with that outfit? And he's so perfectly clean. I mean, you have to always think there's something up. He doesn't look like a survivor. He's well clean, so you figure he's with a group of people. So you automatically, he's not giving any information.
Right. And I'm sure he would feel that way, especially what they just went through at Terminus. I mean, you wouldn't trust anyone at this point.
Hell no.
Absolutely not.
He definitely is people.
Maybe he saw, because we saw the smoke at the very beginning of the episode, which at first I wasn't sure if it was the house that Derrial and Beth had exploded. I was like, is that still going on?
Burning.
I was definitely wondering about that too. I was like,
still
man,
barbecuing zombies from that episode.
But maybe he heard the explosions or the gunfire, and maybe he was venturing out to see what all of that was.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Could
too.
be the case.
Another thing that we got though during this shot with Gabriel is that we get a moment of Maggie looking at him as he's talking about how he's a priest, and if you remember, Maggie is super religious, or she comes from a really religious family with Herschel. And I think I saw in an interview with her where she talks about religion being a factor for her character this season. So this is possibly going to be the introduction of that for that arc for her character, especially because there very specifically was a shot of her looking at him as he was talking about being a priest. So I think that could be the start of that, if that is indeed an arc.
Yeah, I felt like them being in the church for the first time, looking around and seeing all these, symbols and everything. It was kind of like a throwback for them, whether or not they were religious. It was kind of like, this is what you know, I mean, they're in Georgia, which I think a lot of people are going to be really religious. So
Georgians.
I think a lot of them can relate to what they were looking at, and it's like, you know, this is no longer, at least not for us. We don't believe that stuff anymore, but we used to. It's kind of a lot for them to take in.
Yeah. But it was interesting, like, seeing that handwritten Bible. I guess it was just the Old Testament that they had, the big letters, "Thou shalt not kill," which seems to definitely be Father Gabriel, from what we can tell, at least his motif so far, that he will not kill another person.
And there's a lot of Genesis.
Kept looking at Genesis, the burning bush.
The burning bush.
And we saw Moses, I believe, or
40 years of wandering.
40 years
of wandering.
Yeah.
And no mistakes in the writing of the
it was no
the
mistakes.
Bible.
It was
no
impeccable.
scratch-offs.
Yeah.
Well, when you got a lot of time to kill.
That's a good point. Interesting.
Yeah, that is a good point. John Wayne on the chat saying, Rick, for that whole reaction that Rick had, and by the way, John Wayne, good name. Rick is like, how the heck did this guy last so long? And that was his reaction to that. And then Bahaha Val commenting on Gabriel's bad sense of humor, which is that scene of them heading out.
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
Yeah, him deciding like, oh, there's this group of people who don't trust me. Why don't I joke that maybe I'm going to kill you guys?
Your squirrels.
Maybe I'm going to take your squirrels. Maybe I'm going to kill you.
Yeah, I love Rick's comeback after that, you know, about the squirrel thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
He wasn't having it.
Not at all.
You know, another thing I noticed too with that, as they were flipping through with that with the Bible and what he'd written out, was that there seemed to be a note in one of the pages or a bookmark, and I was kind of just curious as to why Carol didn't end up looking at that bookmark. And I don't know if I was the only one who noticed that, but there was
I remember seeing the space or whatever.
There was definitely like something like sticking out as a piece of paper, and I was like, that's what I would have been curious about what that paper was. But we didn't see.
Oh.
But again, that church is so clean too. Everything is just so impeccable. You know, considering all the other places.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Or like,
I guess so.
Oh, and Baha Val on the chat pointing out the irony of Carol finding his writing too, with the "Thou shalt not kill" thing, and the fact that that's her entire storyline in this episode too, is how regretful she seems to be about what she did. And she doesn't want to talk about it, which would, at least to me, indicate that she's regretful of it.
Yeah.
Even after all last season, she was all about teaching the kids how to kill, and not, you know, you can't give anyone any chances. So
so great point on there.
Maybe we were just seeing it through her eyes because it was so bolded. As opposed to everything else. We were looking through Carol's eyes for a second.
So yeah, exactly. It wasn't actually like that. It's just her vision.
Her vision of it.
So Abraham, we kind of get his storyline here, and we've gotten it throughout that he's been trying to talk to Rick about something, and then it turns out what it was is getting Eugene to Washington, D.C. as he finds a short bus outside, because that's apparently who goes to church. That's a terrible joke. I'm sorry. I'm not anti anything. I'm not anti anything. It was just I'm really not. It was just
the short bus just allows you to talk to more people.
Yeah, the short bus just happened to be there in the show.
You're with. Yes.
So the short bus is outside, and he wants to fix it and head immediately out as soon as they fix it, which should take 2 days max, to Washington D.C. and get Eugene on this mission. And the real thing here is trying to get Rick to agree. As we see right afterwards, is everyone's just with whatever Rick does. They completely see him as their leader.
Abraham's gonna start getting pissed because the poor guy, like, he's a leader himself.
Yeah.
And every single time that we've seen him since his arrival on the show, nobody has done anything he said.
True.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Eugene, because he wanted to go off and leave Glenn behind when Glenn just wanted to go back for Maggie last season, and Eugene's like, nope. We're not going to do it. We're going to stay with them.
The first thing they listened to this episode was deciding to go to Washington, which we'll get to. But I mean, along the way, I'm sure there will be more conflict. It's not going to end here. That's not going to be like, oh, we're listening to Abraham from here on out. It's just this one thing. And
they've made it quite clear. It was really funny seeing them all like just walking up to church saying, "Yeah, we just go." Glenn saying, "We're not splitting up again. We're following Rick. What he said. What he said." It's like just little sheep just following.
Did you think that Rick was going to actually say yes to going to Washington? I was on the fence. I didn't know what he was going to.
I didn't think so, but to be honest, I actually thought it was going to be a bigger deal, like a bigger dramatic deal, like Abe was going to put up more of a stink or something.
I would think the same thing.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I almost thought of it as like as a marketer, like he's holding up the papers, like, come join me, and everyone was like, just no, don't look at him.
But
don't look at him.
I do want to put up, I believe it was Brian Lee. Yeah, who wrote, just to go back to the Bible, about Genesis and Exodus, leaving for 40, it's like the start of a mission. So this is kind of like them leaving off to find the promised land. And maybe DC is supposed to be the promised land. So there is a definitely good analogy there. I added a little extra there, but thank you, Brian, for setting that up.
Yeah. And that's definitely what Abraham's leading it up to sound like for everybody is like, there's going to be food, there's going to be shelter, and this is how we can stop everything. And it does sound like the promise. Yeah, very much the promised land.
What's Abraham's story in the Bible? Does that have any
Oh, good
that's a good
question.
thought.
Ooh,
That's
well,
a good-
Abraham was going to sacrifice his son. He was going to sacrifice his son for God.
Isaac? Was that
No, that was Abraham. I'm pretty sure. He was going to sacrifice his son, and then like an angel came down and said, "No, you've proven that you're willing to do whatever it takes, and he stopped him from killing his son."
Which I believe is also Genesis. Speaking of which,
I believe that's also Genesis too.
It is.
Yeah.
so
If I'm wrong, I might be a little off on my
What's
Old
Eugene
Testament.
in the Bible?
Eugene's a meep in the Bible.
oh yeah, let's just go through every single character.
Oh, that's Popeye. Sorry, that's Popeye. Different Bible.
We just need Herschel here. Actually, maybe Gabriel could tell us something about
The
Gabriel.
first commandment: I am what I am.
I am what I am.
I felt like we had Herschel here with. We'll get into that later.
Yeah. So Baha Val pointed out Tyrese, aka full-time nanny, and Bart saying Tyrese really clinging to Judith, and that's where that came from. So
I wanna
Tyrese
see
more
it.
than happy to just hang out with
I want to
Judith.
see a spin-off. I really want
Yeah.
to see a spin-off at this point with Tyrese and Judith. I really do.
I know he
One
feels
man and a little lady.
but it's a tad bit slightly creepy for me, just a little bit. The big black man with the little white baby. I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
I think out of everyone else, though, Rick is the only one he really trusts aside from
Sure.
Carl. But
It's just
yeah,
so
it is kind of
weird.
like,
It's like-
you're a big dude.
Yeah.
And not only that,
Use your body.
Carl gets to protect the big black guy with the little baby.
Right, yeah.
His kid gets to protect them.
Right.
Just to add to it.
Well, speaking on Carl, though, let's go ahead and talk about his full storyline here for multiple scenes where first we get Rick talking to Carl, and Carl wants to save whoever is yelling for help and Rick not trusting it, which leads to this scene in the church where Rick's talking to Carl, and Rick doesn't trust Gabriel still, and Carl gives him this line, everybody can't be bad, and they have this back and forth where Carl thinks that we're strong enough that we can lead people and we can save people, and it's almost that I guess it's a more positive mentality of this apocalyptic world of being the people to help others.
Yeah. I don't think either of them are wrong in this whole dialogue. I mean, Carl's right. Not everyone can be all bad at this point,
Yeah.
but Rick is also right. Like, you just can't. You just can't think that because because Gabriel's giving you a place to stay and we have food here and all that stuff, he's really
Never
gonna
let your
stay
guard
that way.
down. Yeah, never let your guard down.
Yeah,
It only takes 1 second. Constant vigilance.
And you're not safe. He told him
Yeah,
as
you're
well.
not safe. I loved Carl's line though. We are strong enough that we can help people.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's
That was
true.
so
Yeah.
selfless of Carl. So different. Like such a growth in him just on that alone.
That's how
Totally.
Rick was at the beginning of
Yeah.
the whole series.
And then it scares me because now it's like Carl's starting to turn into a little bit of a moral compass. So it's
Yes,
like,
yeah.
so that's a little interesting too.
Yeah.
And then I love that Rick always goes to Carl too. It's like his voice of reason almost that
Yeah.
he uses Carl for. He bounces everything off of him before they move on to whatever they're going
That
to do.
is a great relationship though.
It's a good balance. I mean, Rick is really cynical and
Yeah.
skeptical, and Carl has enough of that in him, but he still has that positive, not naive, but just that mentality that not everybody shares,
Right.
which is good. A
He's
good
still
balance.
so
completely
innocent.
jaded, which you
Somehow.
think he would be as much as he's gone through it to his age right now. So you would think he'd be more cynical actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I like Rick's line as well, though, saying that it only takes 10 seconds
Yeah.
for like anything to go wrong,
Totally.
which is a great line too from Rick about why he doesn't trust certain things. But I guess I see him as going to Carl all the time because it's his son, so you're gonna see those. You hope he'd be a decent father and talk to his son a lot. So it is definitely nice, as you guys said, that Carl's a nice juxtaposition to him.
Yeah.
And
But it's the fact that he actually listens to him. I mean,
Yeah.
how many men probably listen to their teenage sons for advice? You know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
in the middle of this
I
zombie
should be
apocalypse.
allowed to stay out later.
Right,
Is
exactly.
that what it takes? Does it take a zombie apocalypse for dads to listen to their teenage sons?
Yeah.
John Wayne saying Carl's starting to come around on the chat, and yeah, I mean, definitely Carl's a character that a lot of people are regularly very annoyed with, and this is definitely an episode where I think it's hard to dislike him in this episode.
Yeah,
I think
I
he's
agree.
definitely grown a lot. So, and then might as well I guess talk about his wrap up scene afterwards too. Just go into that when Rick comes back and Carl ends up going ahead and searching and listening to Rick as well, and listening to his father and finding these scratch marks all over the place. And this one specific mark that says you will burn for this, that's clearly indicating like people were trying to get in, perhaps. Something to that
using
extent.
knives
Yeah.
to carve, like,
I mean, not knives, nails.
possibly.
Which could even be worse, which is even more
Yikes.
horrific if you think. They were
Ow,
so
it's
desperate
making
to
my
get
hands
in.
hurt just thinking about it.
I know. They said it was deep cuts.
Maybe they just meant using the church as firewood. Like they were literally saying the wood would burn.
Yeah, it would burn.
For this.
That's obviously what it is. Problem solved.
I've got it. I got it.
And
He got
they
the
just
winning
didn't
answer.
have matches, so they tried to use their fingernails
Right.
to start
They were
the
just
fire.
trying to go
That's all.
really
It was
fast.
really fast. Like, that makes sense.
That's what I like to think of it as. All right, so Bob is the one who comes to Rick first and says, like, hey, we need to go to Washington. This is something that needs to happen. And just this jokey attitude that he's kind of had since meeting Sasha, basically, where he's, like, really upbeat and positive and just kind of joking around about saying, like, it's a nightmare. It's going to end and all that.
You can't fight City Hall.
Right.
Yeah. Which, again, you're going to die. You're obviously going to die. Yeah.
I do.
Something's gonna
I like
happen to
Rick's
you.
retort though. Just this is the real world, and that's like I don't know. I guess I feel like you've been in here for long enough. As much as like Bob's like, nah, man, this is a nightmare. You think most people would be like, well, let's just try to make the best of what we can, and say this is the real world now. And most people come to that realization, but. Even if there is something out there where you can fix it, you think like after it's been a couple of years at this point, most people would have come to accept that this is a reality and we have to learn how to live with it. And if we can fix it, that's great. But this is still the real world now.
Bob was happy just when he was not the last person left of his group, and now he's got a little bit of a girlfriend going on.
Yeah.
So
he's
life seems to be good for him at the
He's got a little
moment.
bit
So
of a
why
girlfriend.
should he worry?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
He's through the
Foreshadowing.
roof.
Yeah.
You can't get too happy in this show.
Nope.
That's the downfall. So as soon as they do that, they kind of split up into mini groups as they're scavenging around. We have Daryl and Carol who find this car, and that's the scene that we'd already talked about with the dropping of the jug. But they have an escape car just in case. And then Maggie, Tara, and Glenn at a gun store where Glenn finds this
Silencers.
Couple of
silencers. And he gives this line that there's nothing left in this world that isn't hidden to Tara, and she gives a look like of concern. I thought it felt like she was almost afraid to hear that.
I wrote down, I was like, what is she hiding? And then we find out.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's
I didn't even think about, her confession, but I was like, there must be something more to
Something
Tara.
more to it.
I'm
yeah.
sure that also applies to the church. It applies to
Totally.
Gabriel. It applies to a lot of things right now. So, which is awesome.
Oh, so Brian Lee pointing out Bob is still playing the Bob Sasha game when talking to Rick. It seemed like with that, like, you say something bad, I'll turn it into a positive.
Right.
It does actually. It did feel like that. So that's a good point on that one.
You lose your leg. Well, you don't have to pay as much for pants.
If only that were true.
The Olympic did.
Yeah, they make limited edition one-legged pants.
Then you gotta pay for tailoring.
Yeah. There's a little more. You know what? Less pressure on one of my legs. There we go. All right, so they're at the food bank where they find walkers and sewers of water underneath, and it smells absolutely terrible. And apparently all the food is underneath the floorboards for whatever, or maybe it just had collapsed and all the food collapsed with it. But that's where all the food is at.
Yeah.
And all the water's been dripping down from the ceiling. So they're all going underneath, and Rick decides that Gabriel, as he doesn't trust him, has to come with them as well. Which is a wonderful decision. Yeah. Wonderful decision.
Well, Rick doesn't trust him.
I mean, he has to see what he's going to be like in these situations.
God.
And boy, was he
Big mistake.
disappointed.
Big mistake.
I think he just needs some training from Carol.
Yeah.
There you go. Carol just needs to treat him like any other kids.
Although most of Carol's students have died, except for Carl.
That's true.
So-
That's true.
And Carl didn't Carl walk away from the lesson?
That's true.
Yeah.
I think he gave his gun to Rick.
And he
Rick gave
walked
it back to him at a certain point after.
Well, just because one of them also turned out to be a psychopath. And killed the other one. Yeah, it's fine.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
Look at the flowers.
Shout out to Greg Nicotero though for those zombies in the sewer, man. They look disgusting.
They were nasty.
They were
Especially
nasty.
that one that surprised us with Bob.
Yeah.
That one
He
looked
was
like
super decayed.
that kind of looked like Alien.
Yeah, it
with
did. Gave
that
me like an
skeleton.
alien kind of feel. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, the box like coming into her face.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
right, his face.
It's nasty.
I mean, it's like, it's definitely, I guess, Greg Nicotero is like, I dream and dream about what zombies would look like if their skin had been decaying in water for 2 years.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah, they definitely look more skeletal also than most of the zombies or walkers that we've seen.
more deformed too.
Absolutely.
Skin
Yeah.
sagging.
Yeah, all over the place. And we have this one specific one who has these grandma glasses on.
Right.
Very specifically grandma glasses.
She wanted
Sexy
Gabriel really
librarian
bad.
zombie.
Out of all that walking, all that time of walking down there, the glasses never fell
They never
off.
fell off.
never
They're
know.
like stuck to her molded skin.
Well, it's because she had the thing that makes it from falling off.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
why.
The
good.
thingies
those things.
on the back of the.
Point.
This is actually advertising. That's what they were doing here, is actually advertising those.
I gotta get those.
There you go. Boom.
There you go.
don't want your glasses to fall off. Just watch Walking Dead. You can find out you'll even survive. Glasses will stay on during a zombie-apocalypse.
That's right.
The better to see you with. Absolutely.
Exactly. What better to see Gabriel with? So Gabriel freaks the hell out, runs out of safety, which is always a smart choice.
Always.
Into the open, and then the entire group needs to completely change their plan of hiding in safety and doing the fence plan, essentially, from back in the prison.
Culling.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they have to then go save Gabriel. And during that moment, Bob gets pulled under, as you guys mentioned, where he seems okay at the time, so he seems completely fine. And then Sasha's worried and freaked out now that they're together. So that kind of wraps it up as they grab the food and they start heading back. And it's kind of a mission success at this point where they have all their food. And conversation with Michonne where she's talking about how that this world is so much more real to her than anything before because she actually misses everybody. She doesn't really care about what was before, but everything means something in this world.
And she doesn't miss the katana.
Yeah.
She doesn't miss the katana.
miss it.
Which
I
is
would
what
miss that thing.
I know. We all identify her with the katana. And
Yeah.
she's like, I don't need the katana. I'll use my Darth Maul.
Yeah, exactly. As long as she has the Darth Maul blade, then that's all.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That's all she needs. The Darth Maul blade was doing her good. I don't know why she didn't use it throughout this episode, too.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
was wondering when she was saying, what she doesn't miss anything before this time. I was thinking about her son.
Her son, yeah, I thought about that.
But
Yeah.
I guess not everybody knows she has a kid. Only Carl knows that she had a
Yeah.
son.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she wasn't about to open up that door in that
yeah.
conversation.
That's a good
but
point.
That's a great point.
I was like, that's kind of interesting.
Well, just a lot of pain back there, and
Well,
I think it's almost like the way. I mean, one thing that we didn't talk about because it was such a minor moment about Michonne, but when they were walking before they got to the church, she sees that one zombie, and you see her smile as she wants to actually kill that one zombie.
It's funny. I almost felt bad for the zombie in that instance. I was like, "You're just one zombie. Just let it turn you around and just let you go back."
I felt like that was actually an explanation for back to the good old days when it was just zombies we had to worry about, like a spare zombie just walking around.
Yeah.
And I could just.
Or maybe it's like this is the one thing she actually this world makes her feel.
Yeah.
So to actually be encountering with these zombies, it's like this is when she's at her most emotional or her best.
Well, this is what we know her as.
Yeah.
She can kick some ass, and I think zombies at this point are in some ways the equivalent of a fly. At times when they're by themselves.
Yeah.
But then when they're in a herd, then it's a lot worse, obviously.
Yeah, she's without her katana and she's without her armless zombie.
Her boyfriend.
I love those
and
things.
friends,
I wish she always had those.
Oh, yeah, those are
well,
pretty cool.
Her pets.
Just, if she falls into a horde, just cover herself up with walker blood, which people seem to keep on forgetting for some reason. So I'm so glad they did it last week.
Yeah.
But
I'd also like to point out that if you get zombified by them biting you, then you would think putting their blood on your face would absorb into your skin
Your
and
pores.
into your bloodstream.
Possibly.
yeah.
I mean,
that's a good point.
I keep thinking
Maybe
about
as long as you
that.
don't have any cuts.
In every episode, I think about that. I mean, they're in that nasty water. Who knows if they
Yeah.
have weird cuts on their ankles from walking?
That's true.
I always think of microabrasions they must exist on them.
I was thinking the exact same thing about the water. It's like if there's anything that's disease infested with walkers, it's got to be that water.
Yeah.
It's
The last thing we need
nasty.
again is another flu.
Imagine if zombie guts really did clear your skin and you ended up just having a little spa business on the side post-apocalypse, with the bathhouse with zombies just hanging out, you have them on leashes or
natural.
something.
Bathhouse is something different.
Yeah, that's completely different. Sorry, you're right. Just spa.
Yeah.
Let's keep it a spa.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah, let's not go there.
No, let's go there. But I think a lot of the reason that Michonne, to me, the way I guess I interpret it for Michonne's feelings of everything means something in this world is, especially when you have so little and you're constantly fighting for your life every day, I think it makes everything mean so much more because every day is important because you don't know when the next is going to be. You don't know when you're going to lose someone that you care about the next day. So you start to really cherish every single moment that you have. So I think it really brings that out.
Yeah.
I like those conversations on this show. They always have those conversations,
Yeah,
but it's
they do.
always after other big life events, and the group is constantly changing and their dynamics are constantly changing, that it's fun to revisit those conversations and see what they think now.
Yeah.
Because that's something you would constantly be thinking about day to day, hour to hour if you were actually in that situation.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And Sarah Parsons, I think. Sorry if I mispronounced your name before, Sarah, but Sarah on the chat saying, from what we know about Michonne, it seems like she's been able to find a family that accepts her and appreciates what she contributes. It appears she didn't have that before, which is why she doesn't miss it.
Oh, good point.
That's true.
Although
like
I do
that.
imagine the child element would, which she didn't reveal. But yeah, I imagine the child would be something she would miss at least. But regardless, after all this, they have a fancy feast.
Yes, finally.
This episode is sponsored by Fancy Feast.
Minus the cats.
Yeah.
Minus the cats. So Abraham proposing a toast to everybody, and I'm sure you guys saw it too. As soon as he was doing the toast, I was like, "This is gonna be it. This is gonna be when he's gonna try and rally everybody."
This is his big speech.
Yeah. So this was his rallying call to everybody, and everyone definitely looked pleased by it, but still waiting for Rick's response. Regardless, that they were still Rick to them as the leader. So,
well, I loved what I want to just bring it. I love this speech because actually, someone I know, a good friend of mine, has this saying, and I think it's awesome when he said, "Is that all you want to be? Survivors. Good luck surviving."
Yeah.
And a good friend of mine always says, "Fight for your life, not for your survival." Which is a way of saying, like, just instead of living day to day, like really stretch out and be all you can be, live your life as opposed to just surviving it. So I really love that whole analogy of you just want to stay here, or do you want to move forward and really create something?
Yeah.
And again, we can make the living live again and the dying die.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, you're just surviving.
Just surviving.
Day to day.
And that was their selling point. And you can see Michonne's relief in the background when Rick was like, "Yeah, we'll
let's
go."
do it.
Yeah.
She
Like,
definitely. She
and the
wants
way
to go.
Rick did it too, he's like, "Judith, what do you think?"
I know.
All right, if she's in, I'm in.
It was playful. It was cute.
It was cute. It was really cute for this show, especially if like it's a really
I
cute
wonder
thing.
if that was improvised. Because that baby doesn't know when to coo and not when to
That's what you think.
right? I don't know. That would have been a cool little, if that's true.
It's like the baby just
Little
cooed, and Rick's
tidbit.
like, "Oh, I guess I'll say yes," and then they rewrote the entire script.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It was originally hell no. I mean, hell no. We're not
Hell no,
going.
but Judith says different.
Right.
So okay, I'm gonna go with the little lady.
And then everyone's really excited and happy and celebrating with their feast, and Bob acting weird around Sasha, really weird, and walking away depressed.
Super clingy.
Yeah, really, really clingy, and then walking away depressed, and eventually crying. And we'll get to what happens to him. So, but that's definitely something worth discussing, is why he was acting that way before he got captured, because he was in tears before he even knew what happened to him, was going to happen to him. And then we already talked about Tara and Maggie, so we have Rick wanting to inquire and talk to Gabriel about what happened. So we still aren't clear exactly what happened with Gabriel. We have a lot of hints, but it's still not completely clear.
Well, the one thing I loved about this scene, because they were talking about the toast and the fact that Gabriel had communion wine.
Yeah.
And Gabriel said, "Well, there's no one left to take communion." And at least in the Catholic Church, and I'm guessing in other Christian churches, usually you take communion if you're without sin.
Yeah.
Because you're supposed to, confess your sins, and so technically you should be clear of all sins when you're taking the Eucharist, taking communion. So I felt like when Father Gabriel was saying that was a big tell, like,
Tell him.
that
Like, we're all
Wait.
sinners.
no one,
then.
including myself, we're all sinners.
For
Yeah.
Catholics, communion's actually just a weekly practice we do in middle of Mass. You don't have to confess your sins beforehand.
No,
It's
you
just
don't have
part
to.
of
No,
Mass.
Doesn't
I'm
it
a
depend, though?
I grew up Catholic too, so it's not that, but it is. I've been told, as a kid, depending on how severe it is, like if you've sinned, they recommend you go to confession, not during Mass, but they recommend you go to confession and clear your sins in order to accept the Eucharist.
Yeah, like my ex was Catholic, and she was stated on the fact that she wouldn't participate in communion until she had gone to confession.
Yeah.
And she was like, "Until I go to confession again, I'm not allowed to partake."
I think
it might depend.
the interesting thing in this scenario, I believe. Let me put it on the camera on me for a second. The interesting thing in this scenario is being able to take communion in Catholicism, for one, is bringing yourself to a spiritual level where you can accept the Lord into your body, because it is the body and blood of Christ is how it's believed. So I think what's significant in this is that he's not blessing the wine because he doesn't deserve to take in the blood of the Lord.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, because he himself has sinned. I don't think he feels like he could bless the wine himself.
We just don't know what those sins are yet.
We just don't know what it is.
I
There's
got a
definitely-
huge Herschel barn vibe from that food bank scene.
Yeah.
That he, Herschel did the same thing. I believe that these guys were his followers or something, and
They depended on him, and
yeah.
he failed them, perhaps?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then threw them in a barn.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was, I just can't see how Gabriel can do it when he's so scared of zombies to begin with. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the curious thing. But we definitely there's something else that happens in the episode that might add to that.
So Rick then saying that to him, though, regardless of what happens with Gabriel, he's like, look, I don't care what your sin was as long as it doesn't affect these people who are my family. So he considers all these people his family now.
I'll kill you.
I'll kill you.
Whereas I will kill you.
With no expression.
Whether it's something you've done.
I don't think Rick's very religious anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think it's hard to believe in God after. It's actually amazing to have someone like Father Gabriel surviving like that and still so devout and having these, regulations that he still follows, these commandments that he follows.
Well, we saw Herschel struggle with that in season 4. There were scenes of him in the prison, like holding the Bible because he was going to, bless the people who just died before he burns them or gives them a burial. I forget, but I remember one scene where he cried and he shut the Bible and just didn't continue.
Yeah, well, in season 2 as well, like he was really questioning his faith in season 2 as well during multiple scenes. That's why he went out drinking, was because he was upset and questioning his faith. And that's why I think, and then Maggie now might have a similar battle of religion and how she feels about things. But in this one, we have Carol kind of creeping away and wanting to get away, and maybe she just doesn't feel like she's part of this group really, and she can be part of this. And then Daryl is following her to try and keep her with everyone when all of a sudden a car that looked like a cross. Maybe it's just like a white cross. Like a white cross.
The same car.
So same car that he saw before with Beth driving past. So good thing they just happened to find that car.
Yeah, good thing.
Perfect.
And I love it. Daryl goes and knocks out the back lights. At first I was like, what the hell is he doing? But I get it. So he could follow them and not be seen.
Yeah. So pretty badass.
Yeah, I was kind of like, wait a second.
And again, I mean, that's where maybe this Herschel Barton thing might make some sense if that car has anything to do with Gabriel because of the cross on the back of it.
Right.
It seems to be a religious connotation to that car.
Yeah, they focused on the crosses in the church. I mean, obviously, but the crosses in the church, when we first got in there were like shots where each time that there was a cross, it was like in the foreground.
Yeah.
That's definitely something I was curious about because I didn't remember the cross on the car being there before, and this time it was like very clear to me that they were focusing on that shot of it as it got blurry after Pat drove away. And I was like, oh, I just didn't notice that. I didn't associate that car with them until Daryl said it. I was just like, is that a religious-based car? So that's definitely something that questions why it has that.
Do you guys kind of just think that Gabriel just gave up on all the other people?
I was thinking maybe it was I can't remember if they were drinking alcohol at the feast, but he was a huge alcoholic, and I don't know if he's had a drink.
Bob?
Bob. Yeah. And that was sort of what I was thinking.
Why he walked away.
Well, I think if you read the comics, I think there's a very clear cut and dry what seems to be the answer. Oh. This is everything in these scenes parallels exactly the comics.
But I mean,
with Bob too. Yeah,
Bob's not in the comics.
He's not in the comics, but he parallels another character in the comics almost verbatim in these scenes that happen.
Well, I mean, with Father Gabriel, I mean,
I'm talking about Gabriel specifically. Yeah. Gabriel parallels another character.
Yeah, but guys, I mean, it's fairly obvious what's going on with the church, though. Like, I don't think it's a spoiler to talk about because evidence suggests.
But you read the comics, so I don't feel like you should say it. I read the comic too, and I don't want to say what I think it is.
But
it's fairly obvious.
Yeah, it's so obvious.
I'm a little confused here. We're talking about Bob or we're talking about Gabriel?
We're talking about Gabriel.
Like, it's not even. I don't even feel like it's a spoiler at this point.
But we still should wait for that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't want people mad at me. People get mad at me all the time. But people ever read this up to this point in the comics, you can go ahead and say what you think and what you think is obvious about it.
I think I spoiled it for myself.
Yeah.
Doing my research.
So, regardless of with Gabriel, which I mean, I agree with you, Steve. I do think it's pretty obvious, but given what we saw with everything with Carl and that scene, regardless, we get Bob sadly watching the church from the outside and starting to cry for some reason that also. I don't want to say what I think it is, but I mean, basically he's knocked out and taken away.
Well, I mean, look, I think. I mean, I can't remember what happens in the comics or who he's paralleling, who you're talking about. But I mean, obviously, I think the thing that people can really focus on is I feel like he must have gotten bit when he was in the pool.
That's what I thought initially.
I don't think that's because there was no pool scene in the comics, no matter what. But I think we've seen that before, where people are hiding when they get bitten.
But I feel like he would show some symptoms at this point. I mean, hours later.
Yeah.
Well, we've seen that it takes different amounts of times for different people.
That's true.
It takes different amounts of times, but it just seems like it because all of a sudden he gets so sad over this whole thing, like he knows his life is over or ending. So that's the way I looked into it.
Yeah.
And I guess he's limping. Well, I mean, but limping can mean a lot of different things. But I think, again, because of the crying in particular, and the fact that he seems like he's hiding something, he went from, hey, there's a good side to every story to being so sad and crying. Yeah.
Disconnect myself from the
disconnecting.
group.
But on the opposite end of that, you gotta look at all the character development. With the strongest people are usually the ones that are dealing with the most and dealing with the most depression. So he's like positive every single scene of this episode, but the moment he's alone, he just breaks down.
Yeah.
It's possible.
Yeah.
There's just something there because I would think you kind of got your girl. You kind of doing little kissy faces with her, and all of a sudden
I initially thought it was a bite too, but then they didn't focus on it at all. So I was like, that.
It's confused.
They would do something more. I feel like to show us.
Who did you want to man up more? Bob or Gabriel?
Still Gabriel.
Gabriel
Did like the scream, I was like, come on now, Gabriel.
Bob has never been that bad.
At least get a rock or something, man.
Bob gets bad when he's hiding alcohol. That's when he gets bad.
Bob's more like Butterfinger Daryl.
Right.
In most scenes. Like, he's not like a wuss, he's just Butterfingers all the time.
Yeah.
So Bart J. Braswell on the chat saying, what was that symbol that Morgan found that was over by the church? There was that symbol, that mark on the tree where he got knocked out.
It was an X.
Yeah.
The circle. Like the X-Men. He's looking for the X-Men.
So that's the big question.
It could be someone who's lopsided. Maybe he's doing a cross. Could be a cross.
Oh yeah, it could be actually. But we also saw one. We also
railroad tracks.
Well, I was gonna say we also saw one last week, and that's what our character was following. What Morgan was following was that same symbol. So it's definitely the question is who is leaving this, and why was there already one here by the church?
Was that also a symbol of a circle with an X? It looked like a different symbol to me.
I thought it was an X to me last week, but I could be wrong.
No, last week it was.
But this week it looked like a dash. I should say this week it looked like a dash to me.
Somebody tweeted us, I don't know if you guys got it too, but they tweeted a picture of the guy who jumps out of the container, and he has a tattoo of a circle with an X through it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on his forehead. Yeah, the guy who says, I'm like you, I'm like you. Yeah.
The crazy rapist guy, yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like lingo talk for cannibals or something. I don't know anything about that because that's not anything I've read, so that's not a spoiler or anything.
So, no, that's really interesting. I didn't know that, so thank you for bringing that up.
Maybe the cross in the back of the car is lopsided and should look like an X.
Maybe.
Instead of a cross.
But that's really cool, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
And I was trying to tie it back into You'll Burn for this, too, since I was there, too, to see if there was some correlation between the two.
Yeah, there could be, because it was, maybe. Brian saying that he also noticed that Bob was limping, or Brian Lee on the chat. So people on the chat agreeing that it looked like Bob was limping during this scene. So you got some consensus on that.
I'm sure he was limping. I just, for some reason, I was focused on the crying.
In movies,
that's what I was focused on.
This is probably way off. But in movies, don't people go, stay away from me? And they make like an X? Instead of a cross, they usually go X.
They kind of do the X thing.
I guess I figured they were trying to do the cross, but it's just like someone gets lazy.
I don't want to raise my right arm a little higher than the left.
I don't want to do it too much.
I want to make it kind of symmetrical.
It's like because they're doing it the gangster style, you know? It's like instead of shooting like that, you shoot like that. Instead of crossing, you do that. That's obviously what it is.
We got this in the back.
All right. So after all of this, we come to the ending scene where Gareth is back.
Can we just say one thing before that? So when Bob gets popped in the head. Yeah, I replayed this several times because I didn't understand this, so maybe someone can explain this to me. When Bob gets popped in the head, right, he gets popped directly in the head, but it seems like the camera goes straight to the tree, and there's this one slash.
Yeah,
it's one slash.
Yeah, it looked like one slash to me.
And I was like, at first I'm like, did that guy hit the tree too, or why is the slash there? So I'm wondering if it's related to the scratch marks of the church.
Well, that's specifically the mark I was curious about. I thought that's what they were asking about in the chat, was that mark. Why is there that one slash mark by the church?
That's what they're talking about.
And that's the big question.
I thought he hit the tree also. I thought it was gash from the guy.
I replayed it a few times, but it didn't look like it.
It was lingering on that shot for a long time. So
I thought it was the start of a code.
Yeah,
possibly.
It like the end of the last episode focused on a symbol in the tree.
Yeah,
and this one was just way too deep in the tree to not be something that somebody put there.
Yeah, I definitely thought that was already there when Bob went there. I thought I noticed it before he got hit. But I could be wrong.
Maybe it's the Gareth group's way of keeping track of like where the rest of the people are located.
Oh, maybe.
It's like okay, let's mark all these trees so that we know all the marked trees are in the vicinity of Rick's group.
Yeah.
So I agree. I definitely think that could be what it is.
Must be a code of some sort.
Yeah.
Somebody with a hatred of wood. For this you shall burn. And they were saying, this is a tree that's going to burn. This is a tree that's going to burn.
It's all linked.
I'm just going to chop this one cut at a time.
Guys, when we see Morgan at the end of last episode, he sees the cut in the wood. Yeah. What if that is what it is? What if they're hunting Rick and the group, and leaving tree marks every time they are, and that's how Morgan's following them.
Yeah.
He's following Rick's group through the marks
I noticed
that their
the
group
tracking
puts
them.
there.
That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, so Bart on the chat, Bart J. Braswell saying those symbols might be from the people at Beth, and then
that's true too.
Then John Wayne saying the marks on the tree could be a marker of like X and circle, or Armani Barron saying maybe it's a tracking mark, just like you said, Steven. So people definitely agreeing with those different possible points. But let's go ahead and talk about the end of the episode where we get the fire burning, and we see Bob with Gareth and people. I guess it would be clearly survivors from Terminus, saying, "No, good news is you're not dead yet."
Mm-hmm.
The guy Tyrese was supposed to have killed.
Yeah,
Right?
we saw him because there was a lot of discussion on YouTube on our comment section even about whether or not he was dead, because we thought he was probably dead.
Yeah,
but we never saw a body. So and the car was missing apparently. So
you guys were right. So well done.
that's a quick shot of him.
Yeah, so this guy had survived. Good points. And yeah, he's with this hunter group now, and they say basically, now we have devolved into hunters, and we get a great shot of them all eating Bob's leg in front of him
That was
as he
so
watches.
nasty. I feel bad, but there's kind of a parallel between Bob and Herschel, because Herschel was a doctor as well, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
So now we got Dr. Bob with one leg.
too.
Yeah, definitely.
So saying is, don't be a doctor.
And what did he say to Bob? He said something about the way he tasted. It was something.
Oh yeah, you're much better than we thought. You taste much better than we thought you would. But that whole speech about them and just talking about we didn't want to hurt you before, we don't want to, but we got to now. We're just trying to survive. And at the end of the day, no matter how bad it is, a man's got to eat. No matter how we hate this ugly business, a man's got to eat.
Yeah.
That meat looked so good, though. Just saying.
Oh, come on, Steven.
God, you're just going for a reaction there.
Because I knew it was like steak or something.
Reaction.
I did remember thinking it was interesting in the first episode that he said his name, that he was like, "We can't go back, Bob."
Yeah.
So, do we know if he knew him before? I don't remember them
Well, I know
going
Bob.
over.
Yeah, I mean, I know Bob was the one who spoke out to Gareth,
When he said that, yeah.
Right.
but I don't know if he said, "My name is Bob," by the way.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we found out the
nice
name.
to meet you. I always like to name my meat before I eat it.
It was just odd that he was like, "We didn't want to kill you before." It made it sound, at least to me, like, we knew who you were. We weren't going to do anything to you.
Yeah.
We targeted you. I don't know.
But if they've been following them and tracking them, do you think that maybe like while they're watching him in the group, that Sasha said his name or someone said his name?
I was thinking that too.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they've just been tracking the group for a long time, because we saw those people in the wood shot in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And it's very possible that that's this group who was watching them in the very beginning. Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
But they know where they are at this time. At this point in time, they know exactly where they are. They seem very happy in the church, drinking their Eucharistic wine and
they're on bus
bonding
wine.
together. Yeah, and bonding together.
Did you guys bring up the watch yet?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
But that he tried to give her back.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we did.
Okay, sorry.
it's all good. So yeah, so anyways, that kind of wraps up the episode with that. So I guess the next thing that we'll go into is, should we do comic book comparisons after news and gossip and predictions? So people we'll do let's do comic book predictions at the very last stuff, so people who don't want to hear that can just tune out. So let's go ahead and go to news and gossip.
AFTERBUZZ TV News.
It's the apocalypse.
Yes. So, as we pretty much knew, because last week's episode was so amazing, more than 17 million viewers tuned into the season premiere.
Good episode.
Yeah, and also, the show smashed Twitter. So it generated about 1.3 million tweets, ranking it as the #1 season drama premiere of the year on Twitter.
Wow.
So amazing, yeah. And
I
in
want to
fact,
smash Twitter.
And in fact, on Sunday, you want to smash Twitter sometime?
Twitter's pretty cute.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say.
And here's the thing, too. I didn't realize this, but at one point, The Walking Dead dominated all 10 of Twitter's trending topics.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was like The Walking Dead premiere, The Walking Dead,
It was amazing.
In Carol We Trust. There was a couple of them. I don't know how many. I saw a lot. I don't know what the top 10 were. If anyone knows, that's pretty
Is there a
awesome,
hashtag
actually.
Carol?
Hashtag Maggie for
Probably
Dave should be
Carol.
trending.
I was just thinking.
Yeah,
Maggie
let's
for
do it.
Dave.
Make
Is
it
there a
happen,
Walking
guys.
Dead? Is there a Walking Dead on ABTV? Is that trending? I don't know.
Hey.
We gotta make one up of that. But yeah, actually, it was really funny. The AMC president Charlie Collier said, "It's a dead man's party. Who could ask for more?" When he was told the news. So really cute. And then also, Alana Masterson, who plays Tara on the show. I thought this was really interesting. She was on People Now, which is an online magazine show on people.com. And Jeremy Parsons asked Alana a couple of questions about Tara, and she answered with hashtags as well. So she answered, like, he asked her, will Tara redeem herself this season? And Alana said yes. Hashtag thug life. What can you tell us about cannibals, which we already know? Alana said they're hungry, and then hashtag YOLO. Are we in store for a road trip to DC? Alana says yes. Hashtag are we there yet? And what will we see of Morgan this season? Alana says hashtag Captain Morgan. So that's an interesting one. So as far as based
so
on Captain,
he's the new alcoholic. Is really what
he replaces Bob because he has 2 legs now. Yes, absolutely. And that's my news.
Herschel and Bob both lost legs.
Yes,
Yeah.
we said that, and they were both doctors.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Bob lost the leg he was limping on. So
Maybe
at least
so.
he has that going for him,
there's
which
that.
is nice.
Maybe that's the correlation with it.
So you're saying they all lean the same direction?
Oh yeah, there we go.
Lopsided. Everybody's lopsided.
There goes the cross again. There you go. That makes sense.
All right, so before we move on to predictions and then comic book stuff after predictions, we do actually, as you guys may have noticed, we have the special guest here that we mentioned, Andy Goldenberg, Golden Tusk. So tell us about what you do.
I have a YouTube channel. I'm an actor in LA, but I have a YouTube channel called Golden Tusk, and I do a lot of musical comedy. And last year I created a series called Bad Timing, which is basically takes place after a zombie apocalypse, but really it's in the desert, not in the woods. It's me as an awkward geek who finally has a chance with the girl of his dreams, and while he has a chance with her, she doesn't even know who he is. And it's super fun. We got nominated for a Streamy Award for Best Indie Series. And
Congratulations.
thank you. We're gonna start season 2. There's gonna be some fun zombie, franchise stuff that you don't normally see on shows like Walking Dead or World War Z or Dawn of the Dead. Like we tend to spin things on its ear. Everything you think about when you're watching these shows of like, all right, how did they get food or whatever? We talk about some of those things sometimes.
Cool.
It's cool.
So do you become an amazing chef because of the zombie apocalypse? Is that one of the things that happens?
I became an amazing chef because of girlfriends. I learned how to cook from all of my my girlfriends.
Wow.
That sounds so horrible. That sounds so horrible.
Nah, he's a total player.
I was a bachelor before.
You roll deep, man. You roll deep.
But yeah, you have most of the we end up in a safe house in the series that supposedly has supplies for a year, but all we really have are fruit snacks and chips.
Yeah.
So we make like cheesy poof chocolate bar sandwiches.
Wait, where did the chocolate come from if all you have is chips and fruit snacks?
But there's also chocolate.
Okay.
It's just junk food.
Like movie junk food, essentially.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's actually funny because that's true. You really do see usually unless you're Gabriel here in this scene where he had all the canned food.
Yeah.
Usually it really is just like the junk food that survived this all package.
Right.
Twinkies.
You got to know how to eat that stuff because you'll live off.
That's important.
So basically, what you're saying is realistic zombie-apocalypse. Everyone's just gonna get fat.
Yeah, but we're always running around all the time. So.
I like how you explore the desert setting because in every zombie movie or show I've seen, they're in some sort of forest or woods or something.
True. Yeah.
So it's cool to think that it could be since it would happen everywhere.
They don't need sunblock. They could survive out there.
Well,
right?
So our thing in the show, sort of my take on the zombie genre, which we really haven't even super gotten into in the first season, but we say it in the first season that there's not that much to eat in the desert. So so we're in the desert without much zombies around us, but in my sort of zombie world, I'm always curious why zombies don't eat each other. They have fresh blood in humans, but just like a mosquito has blood when it bites you, a zombie will have human blood coursing through its body. So in my sort of vision, a lot of the zombies, it's not like millions of zombies all over the universe. It's like, they're all like trying to eat whatever human blood is still around. And so
Apparently
they eat each other.
Apparently they have better morals than Garrett does. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Even zombies got, morals.
Well, I don't know. They're eating the person alive too, though. They're eating the zombie alive. So
I think zombies
it's like sushi.
They're like another species within themselves.
Yeah. Zombies are just so mindless. They should just be eating like furniture
Sand.
and carpets and sand. Yeah.
How do they know?
How do they know?
How do they know?
We need Dr. Jennings, right? Was that his name? We need him to tell
Yes,
us.
I believe Dr. Jennings.
So John Wayne on the chat saying, as far as Gabriel is concerned, Gabriel gave away all the cream corn and kept the ravioli and stuff for himself. So you gotta keep all the good stuff for yourself.
Yum.
It's a good eye to notice that.
We got to start wrapping up.
Yeah. So, anyways, so before we wrap up, though, we should do comics real quick. Just some comic comparisons, as that is part of the integral part of the show.
Yeah.
Especially this episode. I feel like this episode really paralleled a couple scenes of the comics. So if you guys don't want any comic stuff, we're wrapping up right now. So this is comic book stuff talk right now. You can leave. Get out. Go. We'll see you next week.
Spoiler alert.
All right.
Spoiler alert.
So comic book stuff. The entire Hunter group is exactly parallel for the comics. Especially the church with Gabriel was parallel to the comics.
It's only taken us, 7-8 months to finally say that this is the group that's the Hunters.
And especially like the stuff with the church shows, like, are they really going exactly with this? Like the marks that we saw in the church are exactly parallel to the storyline with the church with the guy who just. This is spoiler, but he wouldn't let anyone into the church and locked everybody out so he himself could survive by himself.
Yeah.
And that is exactly that character. And then the whole thing with, which I don't want to spoil here with Bob, if anyone who really is still watching, but I don't want to spoil the stuff with Bob too much, but that very directly the fact that what might have happened to him is exactly the stuff with Dale that happened.
Dale's already gone, dead and gone. So it's actually like panel for panel practically at the very end is what happened to Dale.
Right, yeah, exactly, panel for panel. But I mean, even the fact that what might have happened to Bob and the way it affects the Hunter group, that could exactly be what happens here. I was waiting for that to happen.
Well, I guess that could happen, absolutely.
I'm very much trying to speak in ways where you might not understand.
Well, if you make it obvious.
It's good. Yeah, you got some codes going on over there.
I think you're
Spoiler alert, I don't understand.
Well, the funny thing is I haven't looked through that set recently, but now now that my prediction actually is what I guess happens in the comics. Now I can't say it. Thank you. So I won't say that.
You're not welcome.
But kind of like what happened last season with Herschel getting the katana blade. That was supposed to be another character who's still living. This is another case where something happens to one character that it happens differently in the books.
That was heartbreaking to Herschel.
So
that was
absolutely.
the worst
I
moment.
cried.
I loved him.
All right, so let's go ahead and do predictions, and then we'll wrap this up. So predictions real quick.
Now, your AFTERBUZZ TV.
With the AFTERBUZZ music in the background.
Just to get us faster, so let's go.
All right, so if anyone who doesn't have reading-based predictions, go.
Well, I mean, it's kind of a half-assed prediction, but in the previews for next episode, they said that 3 people are gone. And I think it's including Bob. I don't know if it's 3 people from before or 3 people now in the future that we're going to find out who they are. But I'm curious to see who those other 2 people are. One of them's Bob.
So your prediction is that you're curious to see who they are?
My prediction is it's 2 people that are in the group now are going to disappear in the next episode.
Well, who do you think they are? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, yeah.
Who do you think the 2 people are?
My thoughts are squashed.
Yeah, because Carol and Daryl
I just thought that as you said it. I don't know if that's real.
No, you're probably right.
You're probably right.
Well, I mean, we get the fact that they drove off.
Spoiler alert.
So I have no prediction.
I don't know if that's a spoiler. We saw them drive off at the end of the episode.
It's not spoiling
I
it.
have no prediction.
My prediction is that Tara is going to be the next victim to go.
All right.
Okay.
I don't want to say my prediction now. Let's go because I feel like it's a book prediction.
I guess my prediction is just that I get a Herschel vibe, the barn thing, that those are his followers, but I don't know if that was kind of in your spoiler alert thing.
Well, you don't know. It doesn't matter. All right, so we're going to wrap up, guys. Once again, I'm Dave Klein. You can find me on Twitter at @TheDaveKlein. That is Klein.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Nandovel, Nandovel.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joyce Ajouri. That's Jajouri.
You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and I'll spell my name too. That's at DerrialChriston.
I love you. Almost spelled it wrong.
I know. I'm going to spell my name wrong.
You can find me at my house, but don't look for me there. You can also find me at youtube.com/GoldenTusk and check out Bad Timing Season 1.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AFTERBUZZ TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AFTERBUZZTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AFTERBUZZ TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AFTERBUZZ TV or its owners or principals.